He took my email and then posted my email onto his social media page. And it was at that time I began getting calls and messages from his followers that they was concerned for the children.
All right. Ms. Harris, if you are ready and have no other preliminary matters, you can swear in your detective and begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. Detective, if you would go ahead and unmute yourself and raise your right hand. Thank you. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you will now give should be the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Great. You can lower your hand and introduce yourself to the court.
I'm Detective Watts, badge number 2782, assigned to the DeKalb County Auto Theft Unit, where I've been a detective since 2013.
And are you post-certified?
Yes, I am.
And were you involved in a case, or I guess maybe a handful of cases, with an individual by the name of Amin Bey?
That is correct.
Can you tell us the facts, however you see fit, but can you tell us the facts of those cases as you know them to be?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Amin Bey and his wife, Monique Bey, they rented a 2023 Toyota Camry from Sixth Rental Company. That vehicle has an approximate value of $22,278, which is the lowest fair market value per Kelley Blue Book. They rented this vehicle in September of 2023, and they were scheduled to return it in October of 2023. Now, although that happened out of jurisdiction, the way it became into DeKalb County's jurisdiction is Miss Monique Bay reported to DeKalb County Police Department on February 15th of 2024 that on the 2nd of February of 2024, Mr. Amin Bay snatched the keys to the vehicle, pushed her to the ground, and left in the vehicle with three children. And then he did not have permission to uh, take the vehicle at that time. She stated she had tried several times to get the vehicle back because the vehicle was due back, and he refused to bring the vehicle back to her. I initially contacted Mr. Bay via the telephone number that was given, and I was unable to reach him. And then I was told I was best to try and email him. So I did email him, and when I emailed him requesting a statement from him about the incident, he replied back that yes, he did have the car. He was not returning the car because he currently lives out of the car, and then he and the children would have nowhere to live. I tried to explain to him that regardless of the living situation, the owners of the car wanted the vehicle back. Um, he took those items, he took my email and then posted my email onto his social media page. And it was at that time I began getting calls and messages from his followers that they was concerned for the children and his well-being as well. So initially, it just started out with the one warrant for the theft by taking, and that was for the initial case. I did try several times to locate Mr. Bay based on his social media. I knew that he was kind of roaming in the Tucker area off the La Vista Road area, and I found him several times at the DeKalb County Library, which was at 3717. Uh, but as an officer would make an approach, he would start the vehicle and then pull off at a high rate of speed, not stopping. Um, and of course, DeKalb County doesn't have a chase policy, so we were unable to follow him. During the course of my investigation, again, he posted almost everything he did on social media whenever he had Wi-Fi services. So after I obtained the correct documentation, I actually contacted a tracking company with Six, and they actually began tracking the vehicle, which then that took place on February 26th. Now, February 26th, we tracked the vehicle um, several places in DeKalb County, and then it came to a stop at 1406 McConnell Drive, which is another DeKalb County library in Tucker, off of Claremont and North Druid Hills area. Um, while on the phone with the tracking company, I was also relaying messages to officers to have them respond to the location of where he was. As officers responded, um, the suspect saw officers as they were waiting for other officers to arrived because I told him, hey, he's not going to stop because he's took off from police once before in the vehicle. And he did just that. As officers approached, he was able to start the vehicle, exit through a different exit of the parking lot. And as officers did try to follow safely, they observed several reckless conducts. For example, he drove on the wrong side of the road. He ran several lights, and then he actually collided with another vehicle. And on that date is when I took out the additional warrants for the driving reckless, fleeing attention to elude, because he did travel over 20 miles an hour, um, driving while license suspended and revoked, cruelty to children in the second degree as the children were in the vehicle, and officers stated that they did not appear to be buckled in as they were standing up in the vehicle. And then misdemeanor hit and run because he did strike a blue 2021 Mercedes-Benz GLA um, that was at a stoplight in the area. Immediately, I went to his social media page and he made another video admitting everything that just happened, that the police were behind him. He didn't want to stop. Um, and he then disappeared. Using our camera systems, such as Flock, we were trying to get a bead on where he was. We didn't find him that night. And then later on, when I was not at work, I was told that the vehicle had been recovered, and it was recovered in Stone Mountain. So it appeared that he returned the vehicle to 855, I believe it's his mother-in-law's location. Um, and he left with the children in tow. Um, at that point, I knew he was still in the area. Again, based on his social media, he posted um, him back on La Vista Road at the local Chevron station. I went to the Chevron station. They confirmed that he was there. They asked him to leave because he was doing a lot of loitering, had a bunch of bags, things like that. Several days passed by, and then I noticed that he posted a picture on his Instagram in front of a train station. It looked to be a MARTA train station. It had a very unique statue out front, and I went to every train station to figure out which one it was, and I did find out what it was. I spoke to an officer who was there from MARTA. The MARTA officer says, "Oh, I recognize him. He speaks every day. His children speak. I see him getting off at the train station, the MARTA train station." Um, and I said, "Okay." I said, "Well, the next day I'll meet you there. Can you just tell me what time?" He says, "Oh, he's normally there about 8 o'clock." Um, so I met him there at 8 o'clock, and sure enough, he was exiting the train, him, his children with his bags in tow, and they detained him as I pulled up, and I requested officers to meet with me, and they took him into custody without further incident. Um, and he was allowed to have like his personal belongings, like his Quran and his ID, and he was lodged in the DeKalb County Jail.
Okay, thank you, Detective. A couple of follow-ups questions for you.
Yes,
So I know you were kind of mentioning before all of these various locations. For the pendency of your involvement in this case, were all of these locations in DeKalb County?
that is correct.
Okay. And does that include the wife's initial reporting?
Yes, because that
Okay.
happened in DeKalb County. I can say the 855,
Okay.
but it's in unincorporated DeKalb County.
And is that Stone Mountain location the same Stone Mountain location where the car was ultimately recovered?
Yes. It seems
Okay.
as though after the last police chase that took place on the 26th, he returned the vehicle to um the Stone Mountain location, his mother-in-law's location. He didn't leave the keys or anything, and he just left the location with the children as well.
Okay. And then do you know what the original location for this original car rental was?
There are no sixth rentals in DeKalb County, so it was in Atlanta Police Department's jurisdiction, or it could have been either Atlanta or like East Point or something like that. Because Miss Monique Bay stated that they initially took out warrants for her for failure to rental. And when she went to court, she told the judge, "Hey, I was assaulted and my husband took the car along with the children." And then the authorities there told her, "Hey, you need to report this to DeKalb County because that's where he actually took the car." So that's how DeKalb initially got involved.
Okay, understood. And then at any point, I know you mentioned that there was ultimately an arrest, but at any point throughout this, did you personally make contact with Mr. Bay?
I tried. Again, I tried via email, and he just posted my county email address, phone number, and that's where I began getting the phone calls and the tips of where he possibly was. That's how I knew he only operated his telephone on Wi-Fi, and he only operated in areas where there was free Wi-Fi. There was one location where I did try to reach him. It was at the North Lake Barber Library on La Vista Road. Um, as I was out of the car trying to verify if it was him on foot, he actually left that parking lot, drove over to where I was, took a picture of my car with the tag number, and he even posted that on his social media. And that's how I knew, hey, we were right here with one another, and that is who I was looking for.
Okay. So, but have you ever had any face-to-face conversations with Mr.
No,
Bay?
he
Okay.
refused. He refused.
Oh, okay. But are you familiar with what Mr. Bay physically looks like?
That is correct. I am.
Oh, okay. Are you able to clearly see all of the Zoom screens?
Yes, I am.
Do you see the person who you've been describing as Mr. Bay on the Zoom call today?
I do.
Where?
He's going to be in the orange jumpsuit with the balding in the middle and his hair on the side is kind of extended out.
Okay. Thank you. And then this whole traffic incident that you were describing on the 26th of February, is any of that captured in any way, video, audio, etc.?
It should be on officers' bodies cam because when sirens are activated, emergency lights are activated, body cameras do automatically, well, they're supposed to automatically come on.
Okay. And do you know, were there any dash cams or just body worn?
Body worn, I don't believe they have
Okay.
any dash cams in those units.
Okay. And then I know you mentioned that this was the incident that also led you to take out a warrant for the driving with license suspended or revoked. Do you have any more details about the basis for that specific warrant?
Give me 1 second, I can tell you. All right, so as of 2/19/2023, his license was suspended for child support obligations, and I obtained that information from NCIC.
Okay. And then for the cruelty to children in the second degree, can you give us a little bit more details, if you have any, about that specific warrant?
That warrant was obtained because he did have three underage children with him. They all were under the age of 18. There was a they were all with him as he was driving recklessly and being involved in an accident, driving on the wrong side of the road. And according to officers, they were not strapped in, as you can tell, because they were standing up in the vehicle.
Okay. Okay. Okay, let me see if there's anything else. And then were you personally present at the time when Mr. Big was ultimately arrested?
Yes, I was.
Okay, and no statements were made after the point of his arrest?
No.
Okay. And do you remember the specific day, just so we have a timeline of when that arrest occurred?
Give me 1 second. That took place on March 7th.
Okay.
Yeah, at the Kensington MARTA station.
Okay. And then just one more question for you. I know you mentioned a lot about the social media aspect to this. How were you able to determine that this social media account is Mr. Bay's?
Um, he I initially got the information from one of his followers. They stated that he would go live and he would go on rants about whatever is going on in his life. So I began following his open page. I didn't have to friend him. I didn't have to follow him or anything. I just viewed his open page, and he would post real-time videos of incidents right after they happened.
Okay. Okay. And is anything about his social media page preserved in your case file?
Let me just double check. If they're not attached, they will be attached shortly.
Okay, understood. I think that's all the questions that I have for you right now. Thank you.
All right, counsel, you can cross when you're ready.
Thank you, Judge. All right. Good afternoon, Detective Watts. I'm gonna
Afternoon.
kind of comb through. I know you had a lot of information here, so I want to start from the beginning if I can.
Yes, ma'am.
You stated that Monique Bay, that she rented the car in September, was that right, of 2023?
That is correct.
And it was due back in October?
Of 2023, yes.
Okay. And then you stated that she was eventually taken to court. Can you tell me more about what happened there, as far as you know?
So what happens is when you fail to return a vehicle, they're required to send you a demand letter. They're required to provide a written statement to the local agency indicating that they want to prosecute you for failure to return a vehicle. So they went through all of that, and she had to go to court outside of DeKalb County. And once she was at court, she told the judge, "Hey, I'm not trying to intentionally refuse to return the vehicle.
Mhm.
It was just taken from me by force by my husband." And then as they asked more questions about that in their jurisdiction, they suggested, "Hey, if this is what happened, you need to go ahead and contact DeKalb County and make a police report," which is what she did.
And was that Fulton County that she went to court in?
I believe it was.
Okay. And did you talk to any officers involved in that, or prosecutors, or get any kind of court records or documentation about that?
No,
Okay, so that just came from her that she told you that?
that is correct.
And do you know when she went to court?
No, I do not.
You didn't speak to her until February 15th of 2024, is that right?
Yeah, because that's when she made the report with DeKalb County.
Okay.
Yeah.
And according to her, she went to court, they said call DeKalb County, and then she called you on February 15th.
That's correct.
Was it your impression that she had been to court recently and that she was calling you under their instruction?
Yes.
Okay. And did she tell you when he had taken the vehicle from her?
She told us February 2nd.
Was when he took the vehicle from her?
February 2nd of 2024.
Is
Yes.
when he took the vehicle from her in DeKalb County?
That is correct, along with the children.
Okay. Had she had the children or seen the children since then when you saw her 2 weeks later?
No, she had not.
Was that a concern that she had, or was that normal custody exchange from them, or what was her statement about the children?
Her statements in reference to the children was she was concerned that they were not being fed properly. They were not being cleaned properly because they were actually living out of the car since October. So that was her concern, but that wasn't something that I could do anything with because he is the father.
Right.
So that is something that they would have to deal with outside of the vehicle.
So she calls you, she says that he took the vehicle and the children in February, but then also said that the children had been living in a vehicle since October?
That is correct. Because she was living out the vehicle as well.
I see. Okay, that helps clarify.
Okay,
so
I'm sorry about that.
The family was living out of the car for a period of time.
Yes.
Okay. And that makes sense because you said later that the Stone Mountain address that he returned the vehicle to was his mother's address.
Mother-in-law. So
mother-in-law.
Yes, Miss Monique's address.
So Monique, when she called you, she was at her mother's house, not her house.
That is correct. 'Cause I don't believe she had a house at that time. So that's the address that is used for her as well.
Okay, so until your understanding is that until February, they rented the car, and until February, the family had lived in the car. And then February 2nd is when he took the car and the children from her.
That is correct.
Okay, thanks. Sorry, I know that is convoluted, but I just want to make sure I understand.
No, 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 that's fine.
So then it seems like you tried to call him, didn't get through, but you emailed him. Who gave you his email address?
Miss Monique Bay did.
And then did she give you his social media as well?
No, I didn't get his social media until I received calls from some of his followers.
After
After he posted my email to him.
got
And
it.
in my initial email, I stated, "Hey, I just want to get your side of the story, find out what's going on." He replied that he would have nowhere to live if he gave the car back. He's not going to give it back. He's not going to give a statement, things of that nature. And then he posted that email exchange on his social media. And in his post, you can see my name, my unit, and you can see my email address and my phone, my desk line, actually.
Okay. And was that on Facebook or Instagram?
This is on Instagram.
And I know that you said anything from social media would be attached, but do you have like screen recordings and screenshots and stuff that you just need to upload, or do you need to go back and try to get those things?
No, I have them. I just have to
Okay.
upload them because some of them are kind of long and, you know.
Okay. But as far as what you've mentioned, the car chase video that he posted live, all of those things, you have
No, he didn't. He
recordings.
didn't. He didn't post a car chase video. He posted a video in reference to the car chase and people being after him, and trying to get his followers to I, I don't know. He said they were being after him, but he didn't give the whole entire story of that. We just wanted the car back, which is what was my concern.
And that video you have downloaded, you just need to attach it to your file.
Correct.
Okay. So just want to make sure I understand. So you're start communicating with the rental car company to track the vehicle at some point. So are you getting like a live feed of the vehicle, or how does it work?
Yes, I was getting real-time feed. It could tell you when the vehicle started. It could tell you when the vehicle was turned off. It can tell you the direction, north, south, east, and west. It gave you real-time GPS positioning. It can tell you how fast the vehicle was traveling. It could do everything except shut down the engine.
Okay. Had they tried to activate that at any time before the end of February, or that's the first time you heard of that possibility?
Now, I don't know why the
Yeah.
other agency didn't do it, but in one of his videos, I noticed an SOS button. So that SOS button led me to believe that the vehicle could be tracked at some point, similar to like a OnStar if you have a emergency button.
Did you download or preserve any of the reports of the vehicle tracking and all of that data?
No, that data is actually captured by the tracking company. So they were on the telephone with me, and I was relaying information to officers via radio. So it was nothing that I had access to.
Okay, I see. So they are viewing it and telling you what they see as far as speed, direction, all of that, and you are then telephoning it to officers who are in patrol vehicles.
That is correct.
Okay.
And per my notes, I was speaking to an operator named Ben of Toyota Safety Connect.
Do you have a last name or ID number?
No, they don't provide last names, and he didn't provide an ID number, but he did say his name was Ben.
Okay. And that would have been on February 26th, the day of chase?
Yes, that is correct.
Who were, if you have it in your report, the officers that actually did report to the parking lot?
Give me 1 second. All right, my system just froze, but that is something that I can Yeah, it's this new web-based system, so but that's something that is
I can
definitely
keep asking questions, and if it opens back up and you want to pause again, I would really appreciate those officers' numbers. To your memory, was it one patrol vehicle or multiple patrol vehicles following?
I communicated with the radio with communications. So there was one initial vehicle behind him, but I won't know everyone else who responded to assist. Like that was something that you would have to, when you look at the body cam, it can tell you who was in proximity. So you would get
On
that
like
from
the CAD report or on the
yeah, I mean you can get a CAD report that'll tell you everyone who keyed up to say, because we don't use names, so I don't know everyone's voice. So I wouldn't know everyone who responded.
To your knowledge, did Monique Bay have any other boyfriends or partners at that time?
No, not to my knowledge.
Did she tell you about anybody else that drove the car or would have been driving the car?
No, it was only her and Mr. Amin Bey, and that Mr. Amin Bey was the only one in possession of the vehicle with the three children.
Okay. Throughout your investigation, because it seems like you've tracked this case for several weeks pretty closely, did Miss Monique ever tell you that she had heard from the children or talked to the children or had any kind of communication with them?
She said she did not, but
Okay.
that was a question that I did ask, and she said she did not.
Were the kids ever in the social media videos?
Yes, they were.
Did they ever talk on them or were they just kind of in the background?
They were just in the background. Um, According to some of the calls that I got, they were saying that the children were talking, but those are lives that I just did not see because I was not on live at that time he didn't repost his live.
Right.
He just posted his own videos talking, but so I didn't hear the children speak of anything, to be honest.
The people, you said his followers started to reach out to you after your information was posted online.
Yeah.
Did you make notes or recordings of any of those conversations?
They called my line. They did not leave a name. They didn't leave a phone number. They called and said, "Hey, I'm calling about what I saw on social media, on Instagram." And I knew what they were speaking about because they said, "Hey, the guy's name is Amin." And, I don't have many cases when there's a guy named Amin and they also reference the three children. So that's what it was that I was talking about.
Were there concern calls or threatening calls, or what kind of calls were they if you had to characterize them, the ones you
I
got?
would say they were concern calls.
Okay.
They were concerned that the children were. I think one caller said they were eating beans. I mean, I don't see anything wrong with beans, but they said the children was just eating beans and noodles, and they were concerned that the children weren't washing, and that the children were wearing the same clothing. I mean, when I detained them, they did have a suitcase with multiple outfits, but I didn't see anything else.
Okay. So the actual chase, your information about the chase is secondhand from the officers that we're hoping to name that actually did the chase. Is that right?
Well, they attempted the traffic stop, yes.
Did you ever, sorry.
They disengaged so that we have no chase policy. So once he began to drive recklessly, they disengaged the traffic stop.
Even though they saw children in the car?
Yeah, that's not one of the reasons to chase.
Okay.
Unfortunately.
Did you ever view the body camera footage, or you said there wasn't dash cam, but did you ever view the body camera footage?
No. This information was given directly to me from at the time it happened. Like again, I was relaying the information, listening to the radio, and this is the information that the officers provided.
And that's when you heard, what did they describe seeing in the vehicle again? Was that what you heard about the children that was live being reported to you, what they were seeing with their eyes at that moment?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. And you said that they could see the children and they were standing in the vehicle, or they appeared to be standing in the vehicle?
That is correct.
And it's a sedan?
That is correct. Okay. It's a four-door Toyota Camry.
Okay. You said later the vehicle was recovered at the house, the initial house where the first call came in DeKalb County. What day was the vehicle recovered?
Give me 1 second. The vehicle was recovered sometime between the 7th and the 8th of March,
Okay, so
which
the
is
chase was on February 26th and then sometime into,
no, I'm sorry, it was recovered somewhere between the 26th and the 27th.
okay.
Yeah,
So later that day or the next day, the vehicle was returned to Monique at her mom's house.
well, it wasn't returned to Monique. It was just returned to the residence.
The residence where Monique was when she had called you.
Yes,
Okay. But you said there weren't keys, it was just the vehicle?
that is correct.
Did anyone interact with Mr. Bay or the person returning the vehicle on that day, or have any reports about that? Or
No,
just
the vehicle was abandoned. It was just left parked in front of the residence. So there was no one with it. And just so you know, my screen is still thinking. So
okay, I
because
got you. I won't hold it against you.
yeah, if I try and open up too many screens with a Zoom call, then everything will shut down. So
Okay, just going through to make sure I'm not missing anything.
yes.
So then it looks like between the arrest date on March 7th and the chase date on February 26th, you're following the social media account. That's when you saw a distinct statue at a MARTA station, is that right?
That is correct.
And then you went to different MARTA stations to find the one that had that statue?
That is correct.
And you spoke to an officer there who said he recognized
He recognized who I was describing.
okay.
Yeah, so I found the sculpture at Avondale train station.
Okay.
And then like I said, when you see the sculpture, it's like a sculpture of a person. It's a very large sculpture. The children were photographed in front of the sculpture. And when you actually zoom in, you see the words MARTA. That's when I said, you know what? Obviously, it's a MARTA station. So I started with all the CAD MARTA stations, and I found it at the Avondale train station. So I spoke to an officer, described who I was looking for, and again, a male with 3 children. It stood out, and he says, "Oh, I see him every morning at the exchange at Kensington, and it's around 8 o'clock." I said, "Okay, well, this is the day I'll be able to do it, and I'll meet you there."
Mm-hmm.
And as um, I had pulled up and I started to put my vest on to get prepared to go out there. He called and said, "Hey, I I found him. He's here. He's detained." And I already had officers standing by, which is Officer Francisco, who was standing by. Him and several other officers, they were already in the area. And as I laid eyes on them detaining him, that's when I called the officers, told them my exact location, and the cab took him into custody without incident.
Do you have the name of the MARTA officer or badge number of the MARTA officer that you consulted with who detained him initially?
Give me 1 second.
Thank you.
I believe his last name is Curtis, Curtis, but I can try and verify that.
Okay. Do you know if any MARTA security footage was preserved?
Not at my request, no.
Do you know if Officer Francisco had his body camera activated?
Per policy, he is supposed to,
Okay.
but I didn't verify that.
When you arrived on the scene, was Mr. Bay already in custody?
Uh, he was not in handcuffs or anything. He was standing with the 2 MARTA officers and the children.
Did Do you wear a body camera or no?
Um, I do when I have a vest on. I believe I did have a vest on.
Okay.
There was I believe my camera was active.
Okay. Did you preserve that footage?
Yes, it's been uploaded.
Great. So he wasn't in custody at that point. He was standing with the 3 children, Officer Curtis and Officer Francisco.
Well, he was with the two officers from MARTA. I don't remember the second one's name.
Okay.
And then as I walked up, he was immediately taken into handcuffs, and then he was then transferred to Francisco, who made the transport.
Okay. Did anyone speak to either that day or later in a forensic interview or anything like that, speak to the children? Have they given any statements?
Nothing that they were nothing formal. Everything was things that they spontaneously uttered while we were there, but no, they were not given a forensic.
Were they informally, how was it, just outburst statements, or did anyone
Yeah,
question them or ask them what had been going on, anything like that?
no one questioned the children. Again, that wasn't my primary focus on this.
Right.
My primary focus was the vehicle.
Okay.
And I mean, because in my opinion, he's the dad. So if he wants to have his children with him, he can do that, and that's between him and the mom. So they weren't being questioned as to their whereabouts or how they were living or if they were anything like that.
Was the mother on the scene when you arrived?
No, she was not on the scene, but I did call her,
Okay.
and she did respond to the scene to take the children.
Did she cross paths with the survey at all, or was he already taken away by the time that she arrived?
No, he was already in the back of a patrol unit.
What vehicle did the mom drive to the scene in? Did you see?
She drove a small gray vehicle with a drive out tag, but that wasn't documented.
Okay. It wasn't the rental vehicle.
No, 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 no. It was not the rental vehicle. No, it definitely was not that vehicle.
All right. Any redirect?
No, Judge. For the purposes of probable cause, nothing further from the state.
All right. Counsel, do you know if you intend to present evidence today?
I do not intend to present evidence, but I do have a brief argument.
All right, Ms. Harris, you have the right to open and close. What would you like to do?
We'll reserve, Judge.
All right. Counsel, on behalf of Mr. Bay.
Yes, Judge. My first concern is jurisdiction in this case, Judge. We heard from this witness that Miss Bay rented the car in September. It was due back in October. That the family had been living in the car from October onwards. So presumably Miss Bay had possession of the vehicle illegally at that point after October when the vehicle was due back. She did not report the vehicle stolen until 4 months later.
I'm sorry, counsel. I lost you at when the vehicle was due back.
When the vehicle was due back in October. So at that point, she is living in the vehicle with presumably my client and the children from October onwards. She does not report the vehicle stolen to this detective until late February, until February 20th. She says that she went to court at some point and they told her to call DeKalb County. This detective presumed that that was a recent event and that she was calling him at that order. However, we don't have any actual evidence of her going to court or anyone instructing her to do that. But if we do, I think it's safe to assume that it happened fairly recently before when she called the detective. She said that she had been pushed and the keys had been taken on February 2nd from her. At that point, Judge, she did not have lawful ownership of that vehicle. And it is required that if you are reporting a theft, the victim is either her or the rental company. The rental company, she was the one on the lease and she was living in the car from October to February, presumably. So she is culpable for taking that vehicle at that point. If he then took the vehicle from her, and if we're saying that it is actually a theft of her vehicle, which is not what the warrant says, so I'm now going off script of what the state could do in this case, but if they're saying that it is her that is the victim, she does not have lawful ownership of that vehicle for it to be taken from her. She was a thief of that vehicle at that time. which is why, if we are to believe that she did go to court, why that rental car company reached out to her. The timeline is pretty tight, Judge, that she had it, it expired, she lived in it for months, and then her husband ends up taking the car, taking in quotation marks, the car from her, the car that she had taken. She's the only one on this car. He is not on the car. She is culpable for the theft of the car at that point, and then did not lawfully possess it at any point after that. This detective, though obviously he did thorough work here, Judge, from there on out, I do think this is a kind of fatal flaw in this case, especially on this charge, because to his own words, this is what puts it in DeKalb County. The fact that that taking happened February 2nd, that's the only thing that is linking and making this a DeKalb County, making that theft a DeKalb County theft. So particularly on that warrant, Judge, I do not think that the jurisdiction is lining up there. I think that she was not a lawful possessor of the vehicle. The rental car company is listed as the victim in the warrant, and if that's the case, then it needs to go to Fulton County. So I do think that the theft warrant, Judge, cannot stand and should not be bound over.
Ms. Broussard, where did he take possession of the vehicle?
He took possession of the illegally possessed vehicle that she did not possess because she had already stolen the vehicle after October in DeKalb County. So she did not legally possess the vehicle when he allegedly took it from her.
So we can steal stolen property without repercussion?
We cannot steal stolen property because it is already stolen, and it is not stealing if you do not legally possess it. If he had stolen drugs from her, Judge, it would not be considered a theft because she was not a legal possessor of the vehicle. There is not a repercussion for a thief being stolen from, is my argument. I think that at that point, she was 4 months past the expiration. She told the officer that she herself had lived in the car from that expiration time part. She had already made the conscious decision to not return the vehicle.
I'm just going to jump in here. I'm not going to rule that way. And so where I think that falls apart is the difference between a car and drugs is that anyone can have a car and no one can have drugs. And so the vehicle, based on what you're, I just don't agree. The car was taken from DeKalb County. The statute states a person commits the offense when they unlawfully take or appropriate the property of another with the intention of depriving him of the property, regardless of the manner in which it is taken or appropriated. I think the statute is very broad in allowing that charge to go in whatever way. They don't have to intend to take it from a particular person. So whether it's a car that belongs to the rental company or a car that belongs to Miss Bay, the act of the taking takes place in DeKalb County and jurisdiction lies with this court. So I'll hear any arguments you have as to the other charges that we have on this, but I feel confident that the theft by taking is adequate to the extent that we take her testimony that he physically took the keys and then the vehicle.
If I may, Judge, just for the record, the statute says the property of another. If the person that is the other is the rental car company, this should be a Fulton County case.
That is wrong. And I'm going to jump in here.
Okay.
It's 4 o'clock. It doesn't say a person who unlawfully takes the property of another from the owner. It says a person who unlawfully takes the property of another, which means the property of anyone who is not themselves. And that is what has happened here. So whether it is the rental car companies or somebody else's, that is it. If there is case law that I have never seen to the contrary, then I will happily entertain a motion for reconsideration.
Okay.
But given that we are at 4 o'clock and still haven't handled our other 3 o'clock case, I'd like to move to the argument on the other charges.
Yes, Judge. On the other charges, Judge, we did not hear any information actually identifying my client as the person driving the vehicle on the February 26th. All we heard was information about the vehicle itself being somewhere and then driving away. The officers, Tompkins, I believe, we did not hear anything about him describing the person driving. He is obviously not here to identify my client himself. So I would argue that they have not established that my client was the individual driving the vehicle on that day. Obviously, Detective Watts is familiar with him from the contextual investigation of this case, but not actually the person that was driving that day. And that would be my argument, Judge.
All right, Ms. Harris.
Yes, Judge, just very briefly to that specific argument. The detective very clearly testified that he was making contact with those road officers who were actively in pursuit. He went into extensive detail about the social media and how there were details that were very clear on all of these social media platforms that were clearly linking this individual to that specific date, that specific time, that specific location, that specific car. For the purposes of probable cause, which is extremely low burden. This officer's testimony, the state would argue, is sufficient to establish that Mr. Bay was the individual driving that car that day. As defense already alluded to, Detective Watts was also able to very clearly identify that this is Mr. Bay here in court. So we would argue that that is sufficient to bind all of these charges over as stated, and that would be our request today.
All right, I had questions for Ms. Harris about, I guess, at the end of the list. Let me look and see if he did one count or two. So what was the vehicle was involved in a collision on the 26th and later found abandoned. The testimony was that the children were seen standing, at least some of the children were seen appearing to stand inside the vehicle. So was there any information as to their condition as a result of this? Because they're
is Your Honor referring to their condition on the 26th or on another date?
The 26th.
So I don't recall hearing any specific testimony, just that they were very clearly moving around the cabin in a manner that the officer deemed to be unsafe.
Did I freeze or did I lose Ms. Harris?
No, Judge, I'm here. Are you able to hear me okay?
I can now. I heard moving about the cabin and that was where it cut.
The rest of my sentence was moving about the cabin in a manner that the officer who was viewing this all happen deemed to be unsafe.
I certainly agree that it's unsafe. I think it, recklessness, things of that nature, but where it goes for me for cruelty in the second, it requires the causing of excessive physical or mental pain. Could I come up with circumstances where he, quote unquote, gets away? And I still think there's enough probable cause for that charge. Yes. But here, when the testimony is that they're standing, if there were signs of distress, agitation, upset as this was going on, I don't even really have clear evidence that they necessarily knew what was going on. I think that charge is better as a reckless conduct. The rest of it, I think there's adequate probable cause based on the extent of and length of the surveillance that went on before he was finally located to believe that he was the one who was at the wheel and in possession of the vehicle on the dates in question. And so the cruelty second will be bound over as a reckless conduct. The other charges will be bound over as they are. So give me one moment to try to write that up. All right, I think I have all that, and that should, Mr. Bay, that should adjust your bond to whatever extent there was one assigned on the cruelty second degree. That charge should be reflected as dismissed on your booking, and your bond amount would be adjusted accordingly. Does the state show a bond on the theft by taking?
Judge, if I could have one moment, I'll pull up the information.
I see a bond for $5,000 on the theft by taking, Judge.
Okay. I wasn't, we don't typically change anything that's being bound once it's been bound over, but when I pulled it up in the computer, it just says other judge sets, which is not what I'm accustomed to seeing.
Mine shows $5,000 on the theft by taking.
Okay. As long as it's accounted for.
Yeah, each of the charges has a separate bond, Judge.
Okay. Very good. All right. And I've got the disposition signed on the 927 case that does not have the A on the end. So that should be both dispositions signed, and it should be all good. Mr. Bay, you will be brought to Superior Court for any future bond proceedings for so long as your case remains unindicted. Stay in touch with your attorneys. They will help you prepare for those dates and ensure that you're brought to the proper location as each of those dates comes around. Good luck with everything. And if you do bond out, if your address ever changes, please make sure that you update the court with whatever best contact information is that you have. Good luck, Mr. Pay.
Thank you, Judge. And I believe that concludes my business. May I be excused?
Yes, thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
All right.
Enjoy that puppy dog.
Yeah, it's the next to last day of school. And so we had a gaggle of children coming in.
Oh, goodness.
Right toward the end, which was very
perfect
exciting.
Timing, of course. Yeah. Well, have a good rest of your week, Judge.
Take care.
Bye, Miss Harris. Bye, Detective Watts.